Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO and VC podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, business, and investing from the inside out. And today I'm welcoming all the way from Texas, Sarah Romanko. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
No, thank you. Happy hump day, or to the end of hump day. What did you say? It's like 5 p.m. Wednesday evening for you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Thursday morning for me. I always wake up Thursday mornings thinking, we're heading towards the end of the week.
You're very close. I'm very jealous.
Yeah. We were just talking about the word busy before, weren't we? We were just talking about, we use that word, and there's busy being busy, and then there's just, I think that it's like we're in this, I didn't say this to pre-show, it's like we're in this avalanche at the moment. We're in an avalanche of tech. It just feels like everything, there's just so much we could be doing. And then you were talking about how do we, you sometimes come the weekend, you'll have a little nap, and yeah, we'll get into that a little bit around the energy and what we need to be doing to protect our cognitive overload, etc. So it's nice to have what did you say? It's nice just to have a chat right now and just sit for it and be present. So here we are. Even though you're in the past, I'm in the future. We're right now in the present. So let's get on into it. You are part of an investment team, you're an investor and part of the investment team at Geek Ventures. I want to understand where that name came from, by the way, and I'm sure there's a story behind it, and you do talk about storytelling. So like I said, an investor, part of an investment team at Geek Ventures, a venture firm focused on backing immigrant founders, building the next generation of companies. Your path into venture, though, hasn't always followed the traditional playbook, and that's exactly what I think shapes your perspectives. At Geek Ventures, you work across sourcing investment and post-investment support, while also playing a key role in building the firm's community, visibility, and founder ecosystem. And you are very much on the keynote speaker circuit. I see you all the time on LinkedIn, so you're doing a great job there. Well done. Beyond the fun, you've become a highly active voice in the venture and startup space, speaking, mentoring, and advising founders on fundraising, something that I'm really noticing a big gap in, and that is in storytelling and navigating early stage growth. Your work extends into creating access, supporting, I just lost it. Your work, oh my goodness, where did I just lost my notes? That's the worst bit. Your work extends into creating spaces, in creating access, supporting diverse founders, mentoring those looking to break into venture, and actively contributing to communities working to reshape who gets to participate in the ecosystem. Lastly, your lens challenges a core assumption in venture that there is a right background or path. Instead, you represent the shift towards a more inclusive, experience-driven model where perspective, curiosity, and proximity to founders matters as much as pedigree. For me, fundamentally, at the core of what you do and your work, it's about expanding that access to conscious capital, to opportunity, and to the venture ecosystem itself. I lost my chain of thought with the notes, so here we are. Tell us a bit about your journey. Tell us a bit about how you've come into Geek Ventures. You haven't done the traditional playbook.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, what you shared really captures my why and why I'm at Geek Ventures. So one thing I'll just kind of share high level and then get into my story is the reason I'm here today, and the reason I love doing so many speaking events, why I'm so active in the community, is because I care about giving back and I care about expanding that access. And the reason I care about expanding access to underrepresented founders, to founders who, may not have always had the same resources as everybody else, is because of my own journey. So growing up, I was not like everybody else. I had a lot of health challenges, and I still do. And it's things that people may not notice, but like chronic ankle conditions. I had jaw surgery when I was in college. And I was always, and because of this, I wasn't like out having fun with my friends. I was sometimes, stuck at home. And I found that like pulling myself into learning was a really great way to not only give myself something to really focus on, but also something that I could really excel at in the midst of all these personal struggles. And, I really leaned into venture capital because I grew up watching Shark Tank, and I saw all these founders that had all these struggles. And it was very inspiring for me as someone who didn't really feel like I was like I said, like I always knew I was different. Like I always just had that like sense of like, why am I not like the other kids? Why, like, I've never really dealt with peer pressure. I've been very stubborn. And, for me, it's like, I always just felt like my friends could never convince me to do something I didn't wanna do, like, it was always I was always very stubborn, and so I think just, like, certain little things I noticed growing up is that's kind of what drew me to ventures. I said, "Okay, I want to be that person that's backing founders from their earliest days when no one else will believe in them," because I had some early believers in my journey, and, that's kind of more the abstract level, but, in terms of the very specifics of what I've done, so when I was really young, like, back in high school, I took business classes, I did business competitions. When I was at university, I like was also competing in various business competitions. I did venture and startup roles that continued post graduation. And I think for me, it was how can I make an impact along the way? Because my first ever VC role, my first ever, I guess, like internship technically, was because I built a relationship with someone. And she told me, she said, please pay it forward. That's the best way I can return, basically, like help her. I said, what can I ever do for you? And this is why in all of my work, like one thing I'm really excited about is I'm actually a mentor for a venture capital program. I help refer people to VC programs. I am very open on LinkedIn. Like when I was on crutches, which has happened quite often because of my health conditions, I was like, hey, I'm at an event on crutches. And the reason I post things like this is that I want people to know that like I'm not like I'm not perfect in any way, but also that it's okay to be your authentic self. And I think that's
I
why I've
love
been
it.
able to, yeah, to get people to really like resonate with me.
Yeah, it's so profound, isn't it, to be able to, have this adversity that you face, and you can either be the victim and give into it, and there's days when you want to because you're just like, I'm in pain, or I'm like, why me and woe me, and like, nothing like you. I've broken my ankle, and that was 6 months of just hell because I just, rounds of surgery and not being able to walk, and then here you are growing up with that, and obviously the jaw piece as well. And I think that, those forms of adversity, they do shape who you are, and they shape, and you mentioned storytelling in your profile, and basically, or your bio, I should say, and it does shape who you become, and it becomes part of your story. And then that's the paying it forward, in terms of you are paying it forward because you're not only helping people in the venture capital space,
Yes.
you're also reminding people that you don't have to be perfect to be in this ecosystem. And before I came inside of it, from the outside in, I thought venture capital was just this big men only, amazing, like, really wealthy people. And I had no business being in this space. And yet here you are saying it's, you can be in this space. And just because you don't look perfect, or you don't have everything like perfectly on paper, for example, that should not stop you. And I love
Exactly.
that. Yeah. And we
Thank
need
you.
to, and I think we need to be celebrating that more. Sarah. I'm not sure about you. Like, I just feel like even on the likes of LinkedIn and things like that, there's still just such this facade of, someone mentioned to me the other day, I put something up there, like, it's probably not the right forum for LinkedIn. I'm like, I won't swear, but I was just like, F that. Like, I was just like, why isn't it? Like, what's the problem here? Like, why can't it be the right forum? Like, why are we having to have these conversations around this isn't the right forum? You shouldn't be doing this here. You should be doing this here. Like, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, actually? Like, in terms of what advice do you give? And we'll pull it back into the venture capital space.
Yeah, I mean, this is important, and even irregardless of venture, because one thing whenever I speak to whether like any audience, right? Like I've spoken to like students, to professionals, to like in anywhere in between, or even people who have decades of experience, like for me it's always been, it's about being authentic and it's about being yourself. And the way I see it is that yes, LinkedIn is a professional platform, and like if for example, if someone's posting like that they went to a party last night and they're posting things that
No.
seem inappropriate, then it's like, yeah, of course not. But, for me, it's like you have to show a little bit of personality on LinkedIn because I think that's what really helps build your audience.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I've never been a social media person, and people find that really hard to believe. Like, I don't have Instagram. I had it. I forgot my first Instagram, like, or my first account in college. I deleted it several years later because it was just not my, like, as Gen Z likes to say, vibe. But I really think on LinkedIn, like, it's about being authentic. And like, I posted about my fiance, I post about my hobbies, like, and I do tie it into my work in a but it's because it's, like, the way I do it, like, I post selfies on LinkedIn, and I tell everyone that, but they're, like, professional selfies, and I like to kind of combine that, like, Gen Z perspective with the professional side, and I think that's what's really healthy because I really hate it when I'm on LinkedIn and I see the posts of people, like, constantly being like, I have this, like, perfect routine. For me, it's like, sometimes my selfies are messy, like, sometimes my posts aren't perfect, and, like, I recognize that, and I'm like, "Hey," like, the only time I've ever really
Yeah.
work on finding my voice, but I think it was so empowering when I was like that post I made, like, I'm on crutches at a networking event, like, that just really felt empowering to me because I know, like, I think all those people out there who may not feel like they can be open about things on LinkedIn, and if they see that, it can be, especially for me as a female who's had all these struggles in the industry, like, I think if you can kind of help make it seem more, like, accessible, especially when you're not fitting into the certain, like, bucket, like, and a lot of people tell me that. They're like, "Hey, like, I may not say it publicly, but, like, thank you for just sharing your story." And so that's really my goal, is to make it seem like I'm an open book, and people can literally just ask me whatever. Like, I've done, like, AMAs before, and I've been like, "Hey, like, just ask me anything." Like, I will tell you all that, like, I won't repeat the same words, but I'll broadly tell you what people have said to me.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Tell us a little bit about you. You mentioned the word female, and especially like in the VC world and the VC ecosystem. And I spoke about this weeks and weeks ago. I think we spoke about it briefly, and
Yes.
how underrepresented women are, and in terms of the percentages are pretty wild. The statistics are wild, and I love that you are female and you're proving that, you can be your authentic self and you can succeed in this space. What are you seeing? Like, and this isn't just like all about the female as such. I just think it's a really important point in terms of, because some of the men I'm talking to as well, they're just like, we need more women in VC. And I'm like, what's stopping it? Like, what is it? And so I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought this up because and I'll kind of expand it broader too, is, not just female, yes, but also just, people who have different backgrounds and
Yeah.
different, different experiences. I thought about this, because I was at two conferences last week at the time of this recording. I don't know when it's going out, but just based on, when we're talking. And I was talking to an investor who I really admired last week, and we were like, she was like, because I told her, I was like, it's so rare to see women in venture. Like, what do you think is the issue? There's not a lot of females getting funded. And she brought up a really interesting point, is a lot of it actually comes down to the LPs. So one thing she said is actually there's very few female LPs, and it's one thing to be really hard in venture for females, but as a female LP, that is even more difficult. And that is because it's a lot more, because the LPs themselves are the ones that actually have all the money that's funding these VCs, because of the nature of where this money is coming from. Yes, there's new money, but there's a lot of old money in the sense of like generations of wealth rooted in tradition. And so that's actually where a lot of the challenge is coming from. And that's something I didn't really think about. And so a lot of the empowerment not only starts from empowering women in venture, but even at the LP side of trying to help celebrate women of all
Yeah.
different titles and wherever they're on their career, like, it's important to celebrate that and I guess, encourage them and form those support groups. Like, have, like, women in venture groups, we have, like, Austin Women in VC here in Austin, and so I think that's actually one thing that I'm going to look into at some point, is, like, how can we support more of the support, like, female VCs and female founders, but even female LPs, because that's not something that I think we talk about enough, because, one, LPs in of themselves are also just usually very private, but it's just so, and I don't know very much about this. This is just like a very recent, like, week old, literally maybe like 5-day old conversation, but like just something really interesting I thought I'd bring up for those listening, because it's like we need more females at the top, because then that kind of funnels down from the LPs to the VCs to the founders.
That's what I'm talking, like, that's where I guess I'm going with this, and that's based on my own experience and my own, career experience and very different background, in advertising and communications. It was very Mad Men for a very long time, and it was always men at the top, especially as I was, growing in my career. And it feels like I'm kind of really exploring this space and or this ecosystem, if you like. And the fact you've even just called out the LPs, and I haven't had this conversation with anyone, and the old money rooted in tradition, like there's just that classic. It comes back to like that expectation, like anyone who does not fit that mold is I guess dismissed or not even considered. And then it's almost like, and then how do you break into becoming an LP when it's kind of such a system that's been there for so long, or a hierarchy or whatever? Do you also think then it's about educating women on the opportunities in LP, like to become an LP? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. I think so, and that's also where I don't even know where and that's where also I'm at some point going to look into that because, like, I love being a VC. Like, that is something I will always be like, I love this so much, but it's also that knowing that there's some women who might want to be LPs, and so it's trying to understand, like, what are ways to even educate or learn, because I think about it and I see so many resources on, like, how to be a good VC, but, like, I really wish there's some, like, source, or maybe there is a female LP out there who's and there are some really great female LPs who are doing something similar like this, but it's almost like we need more of that, especially younger female LPs. So
Yeah.
I think that's definitely something that education could be helpful, because if we think about it, it was really only in the past maybe 5 to 10 years where there is groups like, or first of all, like young VCs, Gen Z VCs. Then there's Girls into VC, a really great organization for young females. I think I said the name right. Let me just double check here because they're a great group, and I want to make sure I said the name right because I love promoting. Yeah, it's Girls into VC, really great organization for young women who want to work in venture capital. But like, and that was such a very new, right? And so it's almost like we want to continue that trajectory because we have these female founder groups, but we also want something at the top. Because if you think about all these women raising funds, if they're raising funds and they're male LPs, or not necessarily male LPs, but just LPs that don't understand certain like the stories or of women or underrepresented VCs, not just women, but those who are underrepresented, I think that's also something to think about. And that's where I've been like, how can we really change this tradition, right? So that's something that's been really like on my mind within the past week.
And Sarah, thank you for that. And can you just share with the listeners just what LP actually means very briefly?
Yes, I just realized that.
Yeah,
Yes.
same. We're talking away here, and I'm like, oops, hang on a second. Let's just make sure everyone understands it, just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. So for those listening, LP stands for limited partner. So high level, what this actually means. So, as a venture capitalist or venture capital firm, I say VC, usually VC can refer to firm. It can refer to a VC as an individual. It's used interchangeably, or you say venture capital. But it's just kind of interesting of the way they do it. So LPs, limited partners, are either individuals, high net worth individuals, or entities. So it could be like pension funds, retirement funds. It could be family, like a single family office, like, or multifamily office, but essentially those that have a lot of money and they want to diversify their assets. So some invest in stock market, real estate, and then venture capital is one of those. And so the way that we can even invest as a venture capital firm, the way that we even can invest money in startups is we take money from these limited partners. And so ultimately the goal is to return money to them. And while they don't make the investment decisions, we get their money from them. So that's why the context of like having more female LPs, more diverse LPs, it helps to understand like where that money is coming from, because it's easier to, I guess, like raise from an LP that understands you. So I'm glad you mentioned that because it is it's important for the context. And also, very small side note, but understanding like how VCs make money, it comes down to management fees of how many, I guess to simplify it, it's how much money are we managing that we raise from LPs. That helps decide how much money we can invest and how much money we actually get paid every year. And of course, if we have successful companies, but just at a basic level, the more money we have, the more money that we can pay ourselves, basically.
Thank you for that. It's super helpful for all the listeners out there.
Definitely.
Tell me, obviously you speak, you mentor, you advise founders on fundraising. storytelling and navigating early stage growth. Tell us a little bit about storytelling, because you told a really great story at the start of this conversation. I'm noticing, I'm observing when when I'm talking to various founders, etc., in this space, that they don't always have the story connected. It's almost like they've got the pitch deck, they're fundraising, and yet I'm like, where's your story? Like, in terms of your lived experience or the connection between their brand. They're seeking fundraising from their investor. There's also the need to have the story for, the consumer or the customer, and I'm just noticing there's quite a gap quite often in that space. What's your view, and what are you seeing about in this area?
Yeah, no, great question. And so, how I explain storytelling is the way that I look at this is as a VC, and this is also applicable to not just venture, and I'll explain the broader view here because I always like to tie it back to, make it relevant for everybody listening.
Yeah.
But as we see, at least at my stage, we back founders really early. So we might have a founder come to us and they're literally like, "Hey, we have this idea. We have this MVP. Sometimes we don't even have an MVP, a minimum viable product, which is essentially just your very early stage of what your product will look like. And you have to convince us that we should give you money." And that is very, very hard when you think about how many founders are doing this. They want to go up to an investor and say, "Give me money to make my company successful," right? And the reason storytelling matters is because one, you not only have to stand out from the thousands, the tens of thousands that like companies that are doing this, if not, I guess more like millions. I actually don't know the exact number of small businesses, I'd have to check my metrics, but you have to find a way to stand out, not only to get to that first call in all that inbound we receive and all the emails we receive, but to actually get to the point where an investor wants to back you. And so this is where storytelling comes into play. If you think about these companies you see in the news, or maybe early days like Apple or Tesla, how they're able to be so successful, and it comes down to what is the story, because ultimately an investor, or when you think about it as a consumer, like whenever I'm buying products, sometimes, and Gen Z really cares about this, is the story, like especially
100%.
like sustainability, responsibility. So it's really convincing me as an investor and saying, this is not only a longer term vision, but here's where we're currently at. And based on our experience, based on the market, based on, the small amount of traction we have, here's how we're going to get there. And a really clear story, like a polished story, that's a good mix of vision, but also reality. It's what I really like to see, because it's a founder who's very confident, but not overselling. And when you can find, and I think a really good mix, and I've seen this in some great founders, is a technical founder who knows how to sell. Because if you're technical and you can sell, you can literally beat anyone at anything. Because if you can build the product and you can sell it, it's like, and you can hire the right team, like that's when I say, like, wow, like this is amazing. Like, for context, like I'm more on the business side. I'm not technical, but I'm learning how to be. And so I tell people this and I say, hey, like I'm very on the business side, but I like to surround myself with people who are much smarter than me. And I think that's a really great skill of like, I know where my limits are. And so I try to find people who can make up for that. And the reason why this is relevant to any job or any industry is the way I even got my job was through storytelling. I mean, yes, it's networking and all that, but the way I really convinced my team to hire me is it's on the vision of what I can do. So, when I was hired, I had single digit LinkedIn followers, and I explained why I wanted to work in venture. And I was very early in my career, but I sold them on the vision of this is why I want to work in venture, right? It's not for the money. It's not because there's all these shiny things. It's I want to help founders, and back founders from the earliest stages, because I, was not always supported when I was younger, but I did have some great people who supported me, right? For the ones that did support me. So it's kind of that vision and the storytelling. And that's why I think you resonate with people. Or if you think of in history of some amazing historical leaders, they had a story and they got people to kind of follow them. It's it's why people will join startups when they don't get paid, or they only get small equity. So that's really the reason I think storytelling is so important. And I know there's also many great like firms, like even companies that like service providers that work with founders to get the story. So this is my like whole explanation to founders why storytelling matters. And I don't have a marketing degree, but and I never thought I was good at sales, but I just like to be authentic. So that's how I say it.
No, I love it. I love it. And I also think it's like, it's getting back to it's an identity thing in terms of your own lived experience, your own identity, and connecting that to the brand and the business story as well. And I think you need I'm going to call this out, and in heart and soul, it needs to be part of that story. It
Yes.
needs to be, energized. It needs to feel true, not just this forced storytelling piece. And I think that, we can't underestimate that, especially in a world of AI now and a lot of beige coming through. And I think that, again, I'm seeing a lot of, presentations just being thrown to AI and then spat out. And it's just like the deck looks the same, the wording's exactly the same. It's like, don't forget about your story. And I think it's a super important point. So for all the listeners out there, it's really important that you have a story, whether you're in VC or not. Excuse me. So what else are you seeing? Like, what sort of challenges and opportunities are you seeing with early stage founders at the moment, at this very moment? I mean, it's quite an interesting year. Excuse me. Excuse me. There's a lot changing. I feel like it's changing by the second. Every day we're waking up, and we'll come back to this busy piece as well in a second. What are you seeing as the biggest challenges and also the biggest opportunities right now for early stage founders?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges right now for founders is well, so let me backtrack a little. Like, if you think of historical venture investing, a lot of it, well, interesting. So, like, in the beginning, it was a funding idea on a napkin, right? Just like really early. Then it evolved into, okay, we want some traction. And there's kind of, like back and forth, and there's some shifts in the market of like maybe certain industries. Now I think we're in a stage where anything can happen. The reason I say this is because we're in one of those like pivotal shifts in the market. If we think of all like with AI, and I know everyone talks about AI, but I'll explain more deeply why this is not going to be surface level. So the way that when I think about the investing we've done in the past, we have been open to pre-revenue companies, and that hasn't changed. But one thing that's really been interesting now is to see how the companies not only have strong technical differentiation, but also what their go-to-market strategy is. And this goes back to the storytelling because I think right now there's really a chance for anybody with any background to really win.
Yeah.
Out really creative ways using technology to actually get access to VCs they may not otherwise have been able to, right? And so that's where I'm really excited because I think there's a lot of opportunities to support underrepresented founders because if they have like a really low lift way or a creative approach to get in touch with us, like for example, like so just for context, like I take cold inbound, right? Like not all VCs do, but my perspective is if you're creative enough to find a way, like, not everyone has a network, right? Not everyone can get a warm intro, right? But if you can just reach out to me cold and it's a personalized enough message, I'll get on a call with you. And so I think right now founders have creative ways to make this happen. And that's what I'm honestly really excited about. But I do think it's interesting how there's more focus on differentiation in go to market than ever before. Like I really can't think the last time I was like, hey, like I want to know what your go to market mode is. Like it's always been important, but now it's like, how are you going to beat like which
Yeah.
is crazy to say
You say,
that.
how are you going to beat Claude? Is that what you said?
Yeah, like how are you going to basically, like a lot of the AI, like if there's a company that's building in the AI space, I'm like, well, why wouldn't Claude just learn how to do this in a week, right? Like, and so that's what's fascinating is it's also the way that founders are really approaching this because, there's some companies I can't share yet because, we haven't announced yet, but I'm like, when those do get announced of like they really impressed us with their strategy of selling like their really unique mode of how they know these people, how they build relationships. It's something that AI cannot replicate and I don't think can replicate for a long time. Like I guess not controversial, but maybe like contrarian view is that there's actually a lot of things I don't think AI will ever be able to do well, right? Like I think I think, yeah.
Tell us like what, because I love what you're saying here, and like, and it kind of feeds into this conversation that I'm having a lot at the moment as well, and I'm sure you would absolutely be observing this, that it's doom and gloom. There's a white collar workers. We're going to see a real, I guess, kind of change in terms of the amount of layoffs that are happening. I think, and so everyone's kind of embracing themselves and going, oh shit, here we go, we're going into like a depression or whatever. I think that there's this human intelligence layer that we're going to see a human intelligence surge like we've never seen it before, but it's only for those who are able to, like you say, like outbeat the Claudes of the world or think differently, have a different perspective, a different way to solve a problem that Claude or OpenAI can do, but not do it in a way that a human can do. And so I'm less, as much as I am an optimist, don't get me wrong, as kind of scary or unknown as it is, I also think there's huge opportunities and huge headwinds available for those that are prepared to do things differently, to look at things differently, to explore, to be more curious, to have the courage to go when they're zigging, I'm zagging sort of thing. And so I guess, yeah, what's your contrarian view on what it won't replace?
Yeah, so one thing I think, yeah, I guess I'll first answer this directly and then share more on kind of my vision for the future, what I see. So I think it's not going to be able to replace the human connection and the relationship building. I think what it can do, which is very helpful, especially as an investor, is it can really help us with outreach. So for example, like if we're wanting to write personalized messages, I'm not saying it's perfect. I do think there's a lot of things it needs to improve on, but it's really helpful if it's like, hey, I want to find this type of founder, right? And I'm looking for this company. Can you scour the internet and find some good founders? Like, I think that's a positive thing because it makes it easier to find founders that are fit for us and hopefully founders that may not otherwise have that access, right? So hopefully it can help finding some great underrepresented founders. But the part that it can't do is it can't say, let me build this relationship with this founder and convince them to go into the round because, AI can automate things, but relationship building and the human element of venture is something that I don't think can replace because ultimately when you think about the top deals that you hear about and the ones that end up being really successful, like it's because those relationships were cultivated for 5-10 years, maybe sometimes shorter, but it was just a great rapport between the founder and the investor. And I really don't see how like AI can automate things, but the relationship and the core element of that human approach is something that I think this is actually a good thing that it can't replace it because, I think ultimately when you're taking money from someone, like you need to have that relationship because you're going to be helping them and they're going to be going through hard times. And so like that's really where I think that and this is why portfolio support roles are so important in venture. Just as a side note for anyone thinking about venture capital, there's not just investor roles, there's also support platform, like portfolio support, just as important, not talked about enough. Want to give some love to all those people in those jobs because like amazing, we need them. And I do a little bit of portfolio support, so I have a lot of respect for that. But I think opportunities like I think what's going to happen is we're going to see these layoffs. Then companies will realize that AI is not as good as they think it is. And then they'll be like, we need to hire again. Because like, for example, I was in Claude the other day. I said, Claude, can you summarize my notes from a conversation? And it was like, yes, this happened in 2025. And I'm like, no, we are in 2026. And like, it won't remember that unless you program it to remember. And
Right.
it's like things where I'm like, yes, I know we can automate things with AI, but then it's also the perception consumers have of AI. Like the other day I was or I guess actually yesterday, I was at like a dinner supporting something my fiance is interested in. And there's a lot of like medical professionals there, like really interested. He's interested in supporting this hospital here in town. And I also resonate since I had health challenges. So it's a great cause. And a lot of the doctors were saying, we don't really feel comfortable with using AI too much because when you're communicating information to patients, if there's any, like in its own context, like AI note takers are fine, but if you're like using AI for translation in medical terms, that can be very difficult, right? And so I think it's understanding that like there's a lot of talk in the news of AI doing this, AI doing that, and that's why it can feel scary. And I felt scared too, even in my role. But being on the side and seeing the technology, and as someone who uses like AI quite often, I do think that there's a lot of things that people are focusing more on the opportunity versus, hey, there's actually a lot of things that are not good. And that's a good thing because it means that there's opportunity for jobs. Like you see companies that are saying, we're hiring storytellers, we're hiring events people. Like we want people to build those
Yeah.
relationships because they
Well, it's
realize.
community. Yeah, it's community and connection. It's exactly right. It's so important. And I think that's for me the human intelligence piece. And I think that's where roles are going to be reshaped. Like everything's changing fundamentally. The economy's changing, like everything's changing. And it's like, so how do we shape and shift it in a way that resonates and is relevant for today and for tomorrow and onwards? Tell us a little bit about You have just you sound like you are on the go all the time, and we were talking about this pre-show, and I wanna call out energy, because energy is everything. In terms of energy is everything in a community, in an ecosystem, when you're speaking, when you're mentoring, when you're scaling a business, when you're starting a business, and getting everyone to, be on board with the vision or the mission, etc. Let's talk about that for a second, because the world is just like this at the moment, and it feels like, explain this. I mean, I've had burnout myself, right? So it feels like, though, we're almost at this tipping point of everyone just almost needs, the whole world just needs a day off, for example, like in terms of just we're shutting shop for today world. We're all just going to, like, you know what I mean? And so I guess my question is, how are you managing the busyness, and because it's like escalating, and then how are you also mentoring and, I guess talking to founders with regards to ensuring that they're managing their own energy levels, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And honestly, for me, like, it's something I'm still figuring out, and it's a lot of trial and error because I think, like, for me, my biggest challenge is like I get so excited because I love what I do, but that's also a blessing and a curse because, and I think this is true for founders, like, you get so excited and you go all in, but then you lose track of time or you do something like so much and then you forget to take those breaks. And this is also a contrarian opinion, but like, my belief is that, like, it's less about like, and this goes back to being busy, less about like how much you don't want to appear busy, you want to be productive. And so one thing, like, I've been talking to my team about this is, and I identified this because like I'm also someone who's like very open, like, hey, I'm good at this, I'm not good at this, I want to improve because that's the way to get better. And so, I mentioned I was at two conferences last week, but I got really exhausted near the end and I actually had to, like, I literally left a day early. So instead of like staying overnight, I left right after the conference. So like I changed my flight and I flew home because, and I told the organizer this and I was very open with her. And I was like, hey, like, I'm just not feeling good. Like I'm just having some challenges with how I'm feeling and like I have to take care of myself. And I think this is an important lesson to share because and I haven't figured out really a good way to share this on LinkedIn because I technically was at the whole conference, but, sharing it here, and I'll share it in my, like, whenever I talk about this, but it's important because, you have to be really mindful of like what works for you and not what works for everyone else and what you see on LinkedIn because I haven't found the perfect like balance yet, especially because crazy enough, I'm only a year and a half into this role. I've done like other VC roles and like, have a lot of different work experience, but every company, every job is different. And I think when you think about energy, it's like, how can you be the best person you can be? And I've also tried to focus on not comparing myself, which I still do to other people. I have a lot of work to do on that. And I think everyone does, but it's kind of like, how do I operate the best? And maybe that means working more one day, working less another day. But I think it also just means being really open and trying not to get like, because the thing is, I do post a lot on LinkedIn, but what people don't realize is I schedule my posts. So it may look like I'm doing a lot, but in reality, like I'm posting about something I may have done a week or two ago, but then all the posts come out at once. So it looks like, oh, she's here, she's here, she's here. But it's just like me scheduling, right? So I think a lot of it is kind of understanding of like the timing, but I think just being like understanding your mental health, your body, like what works for you, because I definitely have not found that balance because, I'm still learning, but I just like to share that because I don't want everyone to think, oh, she has it all figured out. Because I think whenever I talk to founders and I tell them this, like what helps me build a relationship with them is that I do work really long hours and they see that I like to say that I work like a founder. I'm not a founder, but I work like one because I want to be someone who can understand and as much as I can. And I think that's what I tell them is like, I'm a builder by nature and I've worked really hard to get where I'm made sacrifices. So I think what I would say is like I just tell them to find the balance that works for them. But know, like, if something's not working, you don't push it. Like, if it feels like you're hit with resistance, whether that's some, spiritual force or just some gut feeling, like, sometimes my brain's like, you just need to take a break. Like,
Yeah,
like I
totally.
just, you just have the
Yeah.
feeling. So you got to
No,
listen.
I've got a great example. The other day I had, and it was a stop moment for me. It was a real pause moment for me. I had 6 podcasts in a day, and I was on to my 7th. Riverside wouldn't work. It just would not work. And it was like, and the guy was waiting for me, and I'm like, I cannot get on. I don't know what's going on. It was just doing this spinning. And I'd, call it spiritual, call it whatever you want. It was just literally it was just a sign to say, be enough. Like you are at capacity. And I was exhausted, don't get me wrong, because it takes a lot of brain capacity to have these conversations as well. It's not like just
100%.
like, it's you're having, real conversations. And so I basically just knew then at that very moment, my energy was utterly depleted. This was it saying to me, because I wasn't listening. It was my computer telling me no. And Riverside was overloaded because it was like, I've just done 6 recordings for you today. I'm at capacity myself. Like, I'm just going to keep spinning today. And I'm like trying to make this thing work. And I'm using more and more energy. I just spent 10 minutes. And in the end, I just said, I can't, like, it's not working. I'll have to just reschedule. And that was at that very moment I went, you know what? I need to sort this out. And so then I went in and looked, chatted to Claude and said, can you have a look at my whole schedule? Can you look at my Calendly? And it was like, bang, bang, here's your energy leaks. This is where you're not allowing enough buffer, et cetera, et cetera. And I think for me, listening to you and what you're talking about here, something that and another one for listeners, something that I was, spoke to somebody about the other week, and I hadn't thought about it this way because I'm very big on energy, and it's sometimes we deplete our own energy. And so listening to you at that conference and, you're on, right? You're having to be extroverted, and whether you're an extro or an introvert, I'm a bit of both at times. Like I like come back into my own little den to get my energy back. What sounds like it happened to you was you'd given so much energy, and you were also using up all your own like energy as well. And it was just, you were at a point where it's like, no, I'm choosing not to keep giving all my energy. And so I'm going to jump on a flight. And so you did the right thing. And I think that's what we need to be talking more about, because there's this sense that, we need to be always on. Yes, we do compare ourselves to everybody else. And this just comes right back to authenticity and what's going to work for me. And I think that we're not talking about that enough in business as, for founders, whatever, like we're just not talking about that enough. Instead, we're like, I've got to keep up. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. It's like, there comes a point when energetically you're zapped. And so you could
Yeah.
be your own worst nightmare when it comes to your own energy and zapping it.
100%. And the hard thing too, and this also comes down to being authentic and open with everyone, is that this was a great conference. Like having to make that decision was hard because like the person, the person that was running this, like, I love her. She's great. Like, and it's literally one of the best conferences I've been to. I went last year. I love it. Right. And so it's also relationship building where I was talking right before I left, I was talking to a founder and I told the founder, I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I love our conversation. And I really like literally have to go catch a flight. Like this was a last minute decision, but like I just want to be honest with you. Like I'm not just being that VC who's like making up some excuse. Like I am actually about to go get on a flight to literally fly home. And I left and I told the organizer, and like I just felt like that was so important to be honest in that moment, because the worst thing and this is where it goes down to reputation and also us finding good deals, is like I care so much about my reputation. And of course, I'm not perfect. Like we've all made mistakes in some cases. Like I know I forgot to reply to some emails, but it's like really trying to be open, because I think when you tell people actually what's going on, like, and it can seem very small, but then it's like, oh, you're not just leaving. Like they may think, oh, maybe you didn't like something, right? It's like, hey, no, I love the conference. Like I got a lot out of it, and
Yeah, totally.
but you
Yeah.
just tell them, because then people see that you're a genuine human being. You're not just like
Well,
into exactly.
yeah, real. So, Sarah, one final question for you. We've been in flow for 44 minutes. These conversations keep flowing like this in terms of when it's not, when it's not rigid, when it's not like question after question after question. And this is energy in itself, right? In terms of the ability it's just knowing when to pull out, right? It's knowing when to pull out so that you can go and replenish yourself and then come back with even more ideas. So let's use that analogy for this final question for you. What do you think is the biggest opportunity for the total VC ecosystem right now? Like, what do you think it is?
Yeah, so I think the biggest opportunity right now is young people. I think both in terms of founders, I think both in terms of VCs, I think also in terms of LPs. I think that, right now, because anyone can build anything, that means we're seeing young people, even as early as middle school, that are starting to build amazing technologies. And so I think it's really tracking what young people are building and really encouraging them. So whether that's giving, younger people more opportunities, it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I need to write you a huge check right now, right? Which some VCs have done, but it can just mean small things like, hey, let me educate you about venture capital. This is why I like talking. I've talked to high school students about it. Like, just really giving that access and helping, but at the same time, not forcing anything, because I do think there's the importance of having a childhood, like having a good life and not feeling like you're always on that wheel, right? We're always constantly running. It's doing things in, like you said, in flow and finding that. And so that's really, I think, the opportunity. But for me, one thing I know that I've told myself is let me find that balance. Let me figure out what my focus is, because when I do that, that's when I get that flow.
Yeah. And can I give you one little tip for you, like for heading into the rest of
Sure.
the week? I encourage you to practice giving yourself, it may be tricky, finding 30 minutes for Thursday and Friday this week of just non-time, switching off everything and just sitting in silence and sitting in no computer, no phone, no nothing, and just seeing what comes up. Because that's where you get the most freshest perspectives, and just giving yourself a chance just to sit, and whether it's outside or wherever's one of your happy places. See if you can put 30 minutes in your schedule for Thursday and Friday and let me know what comes up for you. I'd love to hear that. And I suggest that for anyone listening to the show as well. It's finding that time to just to be present. And it's the most beautiful place we can be right now.
Thank you.
Sarah, how do we find out more about Geek Ventures? How do we find out more about you?
Yeah, of course. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Very easy to find, Sarah Romanko. We have our website if you want to pitch us, geek.vc/pitch. And stay tuned on my LinkedIn for more exciting developments and conferences and other things. I'm being very broad because, should have some cool announcements coming in maybe by the time this podcast is published.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get this one out fast. So thank you, Sarah, for coming on the show, and have a wonderful evening. And yeah, look forward to hearing how you go with the 30-minute non-time.
Yes, thank you.
Take care. Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.